Build Kamloops here. Obviously, this is something that council is really pointing to kind of a legacy for itself, at least in terms of this term. How do we move forward, get some big projects on the go? Probably nothing's going to be fully built by the time this term of council comes to a close, but you got to get that work started, and that's really the main goal here. How are things progressing? I've had this conversation with a number of councillors recently. I believe I talked to Dale Bass about it last week, and just, we're continuing to sort of move things along, and it feels, from my outside perspective, like we're kind of just stalled right now, which I know is not true, but that's just how it feels.
Well, I don't think you're alone on that. So I've had some conversations with their Build Kamloops chair, Mike O'Reilly, and actually just yesterday I said to him, look, I think we need to increase the frequency of the group that I have as liaison, as a working group here, and that's the Build concept. So we're looking at what are we going to do, where we're going to do it is part of that thought, but what is it going to look like is more importantly. So if we build 4 sheets of ice, can we build it with an indoor soccer field on the top and a running track, or a space big enough to hold indoor baseball? Because airspace is a premium, right? And actually, if you put as many dressing rooms and that and change rooms around 4 sheets of ice and hallways, you actually have enough space on the roof. And let's face it, AstroTurf doesn't take a lot of weight, so you could put an indoor facility on that on the top. Do we put in what we call mini rinks for the little kids to be able to learn to practice? Because they don't need a full sheet of ice. So those things, along with the aquatic center, that's what my group is doing. But to your point, it feels like we're kind of moving a little bit too slow. So I've made a suggestion, and he's open to it, that we're going to push our group to get a little bit more frequency. And given the people that are involved, it'll obviously take some opportunity for them to find room in their schedules to make this happen. But as I pointed out to Councillor O'Reilly, we need to get this group further down the road out of any of the groups. This is the one that has to have that meat and potatoes set before us before we can figure out what the plate's going to look like. And I think in this case, we're going to try and push to see a little more frequency before summer's done, to have all of these other groups, because we've got some curling group, we've got some soccer group, we've got, the hockey group that's starting to come on board. We need to get them up to the same speed as the Performing Arts Center. So when we go before people for their approval on this whole idea of Build Kamloops for the next 20 years, because it's going to take a while. You're right, it's not going to be done before end of our term, but we need to get that settled. How are we going to go forward? Figure out what that route's going to look like and then get that done. So I think we'll see a lot more coming forward on that side. I'm excited about, having our group come in. We have a meeting here in just over 2 weeks on that, and we'll see if we can't get a more frequent, creative juice meeting going, because once the juices are flowing, you want to keep them flowing, because then that creativity gets to some really good ideas. And there's a lot of human horsepower in that room that I have the opportunity to work alongside with. So I would really like to see them out of the gates and down the road and into the next group, so that we can have some more people in the city excited as much as we are at that group level. Yeah,
well, like, I'm a hockey player, right? So I hear about the ice rink issue, the sheet of ice and availability in our community. That's the one I hear the most. And I know that's just because of my circle. There's a whole lot of other groups who are advocating for similar issues, right? Indoor soccer, a big one. Pool space, we know, is a big one as well. And I really like the concept that you kind of shared off the top, 4 sheets of ice, put an indoor soccer facility in there. Like, and it's just an idea, but like, those are the kinds of things I think that really need to be talked about, because you can kind of do like 3 birds, 1 stone, right?
Well, and there's other things. I mean, we could put in their daycare space, that's always an opportunity. So we're looking at, in this conceptual build group, what does our community need? What do we want? And addressing them in those orders. But what can we do that makes the most use out of that space that we have allocated? And we haven't defined the spaces yet, which is important. I think you don't want to be hamstrung before you're started. We have opportunity to look at different areas. And so I think looking at what can we put together, what makes the most sense. And I'm going to echo some comments I heard from my colleague, Kelly Hall, who's very much involved with hockey. And he said, we've got to be able to do it better than anybody else. Others are trying to get into the same game of, let's attract some tournaments, let's attract the world class. We have to do it better than anyone else. And we've been the tournament capital for quite some time. We need to be now moving into the next stage when we build these ice rinks, that they are the best that we can afford, and that they are better than anybody else, because that will set us apart economically. I believe I heard a stat from our deputy CAO about this some time ago, Byron McCorkle, that for the amount of money that we invested in the original tournament capital concept, we've got about a 20-to-1 return on our dollar. That's not bad. You put $1 in, you get $20 out, and it's taken some time, but that's the legacy of that kind of a capital project. We also got other things that we're building into these concepts, like how can we get to net zero? We've got to look at climate change issues. How can we make some of the most state-of-the-art, most environmentally friendly, climate-ready, all these things get built in there? Oh, does it need some housing into there? Can we make use of some rent geared to income space? All sorts of other things get built into these concepts. And so that's the exciting part about sitting at this table, working with architects and engineers and people who have run these facilities, people who have designed these facilities, local developers and our city staff, and going, how do we make this happen? And how is this going to be something that we're all going to be so proud of, and others are going to go, I want to go there because they've got this and our group needs that opportunity.
Now, as we sit here, it's spring of 2024. There's going to be an election in the fall. This is oftentimes a good opportunity to kind of push those who are already in government to say, hey, what are you promising us? Do you feel like there might be an opportunity as a Build Kamloops committee member to get some kind of commitment from the province here over the course of this summer, whether it be Performing Arts Center or something else, just because it is this kind of opportunity where they're a little more willing to say yes than they might normally be?
Well, absolutely. We're mindful of that, which is the reason why I suggest that we need to get these concepts further down the road. And I'm going to say they'll be shovel ready by the time there's an election this fall or perhaps the year after for the federal government. But we've got to get them to a point where that if the opportunity comes around from somebody who's looking to spend some money and get some goodwill and hopefully, as I jokingly say, buy some votes, that this is the opportunity. We're like, well, this is what it will do for our community. Hey, we've got this almost ready. Here's the concept. Do you think it's a good one? Give us some. And I mean, we've been a little disappointed. Just recently on the Housing Accelerator Fund out of the federal CMHC, we got zero.
Yeah.
Our neighbors to the south in Kelowna, they got $32 million. So we've been shorted a bit, and we're making some of those higher levels of government aware that we're mindful of the fact that, previously last year, the provincial government gave Kelowna 25 plus, and we got 15. We're short some money that, and for whatever reason, Kamloops is not getting its fair shake at the stick. And I think the last thing I always want to remind people is Kamloops is an island. We've known that for years.
Yep.
In the regional district, we are the largest municipality. There is no one like us. You can't say to Vinsula or Barrie, build 4 sheets of ice and we'll build Performing Arts Center, because they're not close and they don't have the capacity. Well, Kelowna has West Kelowna. Kelowna has Rutland. Kelowna has Lake Country. They have Penticton. All of that sort of central corridor throughout the Okanagan has the ability to lean on each other for a lot of capital assets. We do not. So being mindful of that in our ask to other levels of government. And let's face it, we're the place that people come to when there's a disaster. We are the ones that seem to house them and figure everything out. How about giving us a little reward for doing a good job? That's the way I'm taking it. So yeah, we're going to get this down the road and hopefully get some money towards this, so it's not going to come out of our taxpayers directly here. I always remind people we're going to pay for it anyways, because it's federal or provincial tax. You're still paying for it.
I know. It's a hard concept for some people to grasp all that, but yeah, for sure.